Okay, thank you. Welcome to CERT Basic Training tonight. I'm Bill Lindsay. I will be going through the viewfoils with you and answering any questions you may have. Hopefully, I'll tell you how to read your book and how it will work with these slides. And for roll tonight, we're taking everybody going to chat and turning on their chat button and typing in their names and then getting out of chat and listening to the presentation. You may keep your mics open because there's only about 6 of us. I was worried we were going to have 59 of us here tonight, but it doesn't seem like everybody's going to make it tonight. Let's start off with, can everybody see the viewfoils? Because I'm going to close down the left side. That'll maybe make us more to the middle. I see a lot of pictures on the side of mine.
Looks good for us. We can see it.
You can see it. Okay. The right side may not be perfectly visible. So let's start the first viewfoil. Let's go to the slideshow and start from the beginning. Basic training is this slide presentation. The manuals come from FEMA. I hope everybody received one and has made a copy or can put it up on their screen and see it. The trick to reading these viewfoils is, you notice here it says Unit 1, Disaster Preparation. Then as I go to the next viewfoil, if you look down at the lower right-hand corner, it says PM, which means Participants Manual 1-1. So it's Unit 1, page 1. So as we go through here, it'll work pretty good. Okay, Rich, can you give me a little technical help here for a moment? Can you make the pictures on my side of the screen disappear? Because it's getting into some of the text.
I'm afraid I can't, Bill. I can't control what's going on your screen.
Okay. Okay.
If needed to, you can grab the top of that little section and move it around on your screen to a different location if needs be.
It doesn't seem to want to. Okay. It's working. There we go. Unit 1, Disaster Preparedness. These are the things that the manuals says that are important to be able to be a CERT. I read them from top down to the bottom, but if you read it from the bottom up, you will really get a different feel of what is being presented. These are written by professional responders, and they forget us as the responders that are their assistants or doing things when they're not available. They forget to put us sometimes up with them. So if you look at a normal pyramid, you start off with individuals and families, then your neighborhoods, and then you get a little bit more of the community, and finally you get the whole city in there. And the reason that CERT was started was to help people in unincorporated areas in LA County. But if you go to your manual, it says it started in 1986 in LA City Fire Department, not County Fire Department. I married into a family. My brother-in-law is a retired chief from LA County. And so in my train the trainers class, they had a question, when did CERT start? They said 76 in that manual. But in reality, I was talking to my brother-in-law about this in 73 and 4 and 5. And then LA County developed it, and I believe that's when they started calling it CERT. Some communities do not call it CERT. In San Francisco, it's called NERT. Instead of community, it's neighborhood. They want to be neighborhoods. So it may be called something else in a different county or different state. And so I know that unique people in in San Francisco call it. So let's start off with this CERT. CERTs are able to assist emergency service personnel when requested in accordance with standard operating procedures. And that's the SOP developed by the sponsoring agent and by area of training. Now, when by area of training, in Brentwood, California, where I lived, it was in Contra Costa County, not LA, where it was made famous by a trial down there for murder. It was under the police department. They did not have a fire department. So it can be put on by a fire department, by a police department. It can be sponsored by a business, a school, or different other types of community organizations. So the sponsoring agency has responsibilities for it. Assume some of the functions of emergency services personnel following a disaster. In other words, you are not a fireman, you're not a policeman, you're not the mayor, you're just a volunteer. And so what you need to do is to think that you are there to help your family and your neighbors. And then that will connect in with the city or an area that the city will break out for an emergency zone. So you're going to prepare families and communities prior to emergencies and assist neighbors during an emergency when first responders are not available. And we have 8 units we're going to be working on, try to do 2 a week.
Hey, Bill, I have a quick question.
Sure.
How do you know, you said that the CERT volunteers are there to help when the regular, emergency personnel is not able to help. At what point and how do you know if they're not able to help?
We'll get to that later. I'm just giving you the preliminaries. If you were watching the U of U thing, it had a real pretty movie and some viewfoils from Virginia. So let me just go through. I'm trying to just show you the 8 different units we're going to go through. The 9th one is supposed to be a test and a drill. So hopefully in April, we'll get to have a drill. So Chris, would you like to read the first thing there under objectives?
Give me a moment. Yep. Description of CERT, discuss your role as a CERT volunteer and explain how CERT fits into your community's emergency preparedness structure. Describe the types of hazards most likely to affect your communities and the potential impact on people, health, and infrastructure. Prepare yourself and your family for potential disasters your community may face, including learning to create a family disaster plan and emergency preparedness kit.
Okay. Question to anybody. What does that mean to you? It's a loaded question, guys. Anything goes. No answers? Well, basically, as we go through here, we're going to talk about what you do as a CERT volunteer and how this organization called CERT fits into the community emergency structure. And eventually we're going to talk about some hazards in our community and prepare yourself and your family. If you notice on your book, it gets a lot of checklists in there of things you need to prepare for. And I've added a few extra foils in here a little bit later, but we'll wait to there. Just to give you a little background here. Your work, we're supposed to, at this point, jump into this wonderful build a bridge or build a tower. And I did this in my training, and they laid out pieces of paper and tape and glue. And we had 5 minutes to discuss how we were going to build it and 5 minutes to build it. It was very interesting how people made things come about. So basically, we're not going to do this, and we're not going to do this in a hands-on because nobody wants you to get back to the Cub Scout era of your life. So we're going to skip that. Preparedness is important for communities of all sizes. There's going to be key priorities we're going to discuss that will lessen the impact of an incident. There are things that are critical to all members of the community and the steps that we need to take. And there will be some effective ways to address unique attributes of community engaged as whole community. Okay, let's look down now at that right corner again. 1.3, can you open up your manuals to that? Because this is a summary of what you've read on page in chapter 1 or unit 1, page 3. Has everybody got that?
Maybe this is discussed. I came in a little late, but I don't
That's
have a
fine.
manual.
You don't.
No.
One of the emails I sent out a manual, and I'll resend it to you. So Cindy or
It's
Mindy,
Mindy. Uh-huh.
my bifocals don't work, as you know, as I have to lift them up. You will go to the chat area, type in your name and say, need manual. I'll send it to you.
Oh, okay.
I was having trouble on sending out manual.
Mindy, include your email.
Okay. That's great. And I'm going to do that where?
Go down to the middle of the, take your mouse to the middle, and as you go to the middle, it will pop up an area called chat.
Oh, in the chat. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Click on that and then type your name in there, and your email would be a good thing, and phone number maybe. If you didn't pre-register with the city, I probably have it. I just don't have
Okay.
it for me to look.
And you are Rich, right?
I'm Bill.
You're Bill. Okay.
Rich
Bill
is
Lindsay.
hosting our presentation tonight.
Okay.
And I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
that beg your pardon?
Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying to get us into the new present manual. And the new present manual, it was developed in 2019. In December, we got a copy of it. And then they keep changing manuals as they go along. So then they came out with they did everything in December, but for 2 years, they've been trying to develop the manual. So as I was telling everybody earlier, as the slides go along, you can follow by going to the lower right column there, down at the bottom of the view foil. It says PM, which means Participant Manual, Unit 1, page 3. So when you get the manual, you can do that.
Okay. Thank you.
So these are just summaries, and I'm going to read them to you, or you can read them if you want to. That might be fun. And you can ask questions. And I'm sitting over here with a book that is an instructor's guide. And lo and behold, I see each view foil and a lot of things I can tell you if you have questions and you didn't get it when you read it. And so next week, read the first aid units 3 and 4. If you
Okay.
would. The government has a responsibility to do the following things. The summary is develop, test, and refine emergency plans. Ensure emergency responders have adequate skills and training and resources. Provide services to protect and assist citizens. And that's just a good summary. Does anybody have a question on that before I flip? No questions. Next one. All government agencies with a role in disaster response work to organize and coordinate their agencies' activities before an emergency or disasters occurs using an EOP. Emergency Operation Plan is what that stands for. They love to make abbreviations. Assigns responsibility to organizations and individuals, sets forth lines of authority, describes how people and property are to be protected, identifies personal equipment, facilities, supplies, and other resources. If you were taking the U of U test, they would give you a few view files like this, and then they'll ask you questions. And you have to look at if you had my view foils, I'm doing it also through the U of U to see how it corresponds. And sometimes the answers are on the view foils. Sometimes you have to go through the manual And you have to read real carefully because there's school teachers that wrote it for their test that they give you as you go through. Okay. Have a responsibility to participate in communities. Can anybody think of any other group that's not on this summary here? So here we go. Participate with local collaboration. I can't speak tonight. Let me get a drink of water here. There's planning councils that people can get on. They can identify appropriate resources into government plans and ensure facilities and staff and customers are served and are prepared. So as you're going through this manual, remember, go through those books, take the checklist, and do you have that in your group? Because CERT was started to help people in California in unincorporated areas. I'm repeating this so that everybody gets it. So basically, CERT is to take care of yourself, your family, and your neighbors when the professionals cannot come and visit you. And when they can't come and visit you within 15 minutes, it's starting to get to be an emergency. And our community is very resourceful. And also, if you look into the engines, the fire engines that are going up and down the streets, and those police cars and the EMT ambulances are going up and down, you will see a lot of them that are not Eagle Mountain. We have mutual response or mutual aid between cities. A lot of times, I live right here on the borderline between Eagle Mountain, Saratoga Springs off of Highway 73. And I will see Saratoga Springs units going to a incident a lot of times. In fact, the first street that has a signal on it, sometimes we may get 2 to 3 accidents in a day. So we see a lot of Saratogans over helping us, and we respond to them as they need it. And if you didn't realize it, we have 2 fire stations, one here in the Ranches area and one in City Center area. They each have 3 firemen in each of the fire stations. And out of City Hall, I think we have 6 sheriffs doing our policing function. So remember those numbers, Chris, because we're going to talk about them in a minute. Okay, so what we need to do as public is learn community alerts. What we will probably get here is a telephone call, or it's called reverse 911, and they'll give us a message. Where I live right across the street from gravel pits. So they have explosions, they dynamite every now and then. So we'll get a noise alert. And we get little things like that. So, or if there's a noise alert, or if Camp Williams is doing something will pop up on your cell phone or your text messaging. So once we learn those things and watch them, we can be a little safer. Take training such as CERT, such as Red Cross, and there's other types of VOAD groups that are helpful for training. After taking training, you need to practice these skills, and you need to make those personal. I could talk forever on those things, but I won't at this moment. In fact, I only need 3 viewfoils to tell you to talk for 2 hours. And we're going to take a break in a few minutes, and so that you won't get too tired of setting. Okay, let's see. They use the whole community approach for preparedness and trying to make everything to full capacity for the society of society. I'm trying to read around the viewfoil there. Relationships and social connections are the foundation for more resilient communities. They'll bounce back after a disaster. And if somebody else would like to read, that's fine. There's a lot of coalitions of groups of people that are that do safety type preparations and emergency preparedness and activities. And there's about 30 of them in this state that I know of. Let's see. Now, you guys are having a new assignment here. Got your pencil and paper for assignment? It says, talk to friends and families about hazards. If you notice, we'll go through and we'll look at different hazards around the house. If you go into somebody's house, and the one that I get talked about when my brother-in-law comes, he looks at my bookcase, and I'm turning to the side looking at them. They're about 10 feet tall, and there's about 4 of them, and it goes across half of my wall. My brother-in-law, who's a chief, retired chief from LA County Fire, the minute he walked in, he turned to me and says, Bill, did you anchor those bookcases? Yes, Ron, I anchored those bookcases. So every time my brother-in-law comes over and he sees something different, and it could be a potential hazard, he goes through the checklist with me. Bill, did you? And I say yes or no, and take appropriate action. Ask about emergency planning outside of the house. You need to look at what your neighbors have planned for. Some people are totally unaware of what they can find on their city resources or state or county on helping for emergency plans. And those changes need to be implemented. There's a lot of training, CERT's one of them. And the way we train is we prepare ourselves and our family. We do drills and exercises. It's very hard to do it with a pandemic in place. So it's going to be opening up. I was just at a meeting at 4 o'clock today on Zoom, and they're starting to plan for September to be active, and they're canceling some of the things that were prepared for the shakeout. The shakeout has been officially been told there's not going to happen this year. So they may have some, our county may have some online virtual ways of doing it, but we'll see what that brings in the next month here. Rich and I are on a group, our panel, and we go through things like that on a monthly basis. And right now they're on hold, and we're trying to do things over Zoom or other types of media. Okay, here we go. Chris,
I have a quick question for you.
Go ahead, Mindy.
So for the shakeout, that's one of the things I have a huge deficit in knowledge. Even though I was raised in California and have experienced several earthquakes, there's a lot of stuff I need to know about that. Will we be going over that, or is there a place where I can go to get that information?
I will say one thing, that the best thing is to wait until the last time we meet, because Rich and I are going to get together along with our hand radio group, Dave, and others in the city, and try to see if we could get you a virtual online something to do for the shakeout. I grew up also in California. I lived both in Southern and Northern California. And I had a brother that was up in San Francisco area. He left San Francisco and went across the bay to another part. And that's when they had the World Series. 2 teams out of San Francisco were in the World Series, and they had that big earthquake. I think it was about 89. And I lived up there later on. I lived there for about 20 years before I moved to Utah, and they still hadn't fixed everything. So Mindy, you're not behind.
Oh, good. But I need to get caught up, so.
Well, let's talk about while we're on earthquakes. Last, was it about April or March? We had the pandemic start in March, and somewhere after that, we had about a 3.1. I think the Angel Moroni fell off the temple in Salt Lake. There was some cracks in places. I got from the Red Cross, my leader of the Red Cross, he said, there was maybe a dozen people that were put up in shelters by the Red Cross. It was very minimal. All the professionals took care of it. No CERT were called out in any of the communities that I know of to do much help. And so that's a minor earthquake. My saying is if it doesn't get to 6 or 7, it's not really recorded as an earthquake in Southern California or Northern California. And here's another thing about earthquakes. If you want beachfront property, you buy property in Arizona, Nevada, and Idaho and wait for the big earthquake. Okay.
No
I hope
Utah,
that
huh?
rises it up. Let's talk about wildfires. 2018. I've got a good presentation on those, the wildfires. And they were horrific in California. They had some temperatures they'd never experienced in fires there. We lost one of our firefighters from over in the Draper area, as I recall, who was loaned out to California to help. And so there's a lot of mutual aid between the states, is what I'm saying. So for wildfires, and here, everybody went to these different places. There was 2 cities. Can't think what they were. Getting old, I don't remember all the names of the cities here in Utah anyway. That one of the cities was prepared and one wasn't. We want to be found prepared. Wildfires are, you just don't know what they're going to do. Floods comes after heavy rains or heavy snows. And if we don't get the heavy rains and the heavy snows, we get dryness and extreme heats here in Utah. And I guess if you go down to southern Utah, it can get really hot down there. I have a son that lives in Houston. He's experienced, which was what was the last one that hit was can't think of what it was called. He's a police officer, and he had to worry about fire ants and crocodiles and snakes and silly people going in underpasses and with going around signs that said, "Do not go beyond this point because it's a flooded area." And they always had to drag somebody out after floods, especially hurricanes. Landslides. Another type of slide we have is avalanches. So in extreme colds, we can get avalanches. And after a lot of water, we get a lot of landslides. Thunderstorms. Oh, has anybody ever lived in Texas? Well, in Texas, that's about the strongest thunderstorms I've ever had. I haven't experienced any here in Utah that is equivalent to what I've experienced in Texas. They light up the sky and they're loud and they shake the ground. Now, thunderstorms, I live over here in the part of ranches where, well, I guess it was 2 or 3 years ago, somebody was hit by the bolt of lightning and they survived. And they can be very serious. Tornadoes is what we have instead of hurricanes. We won't have a tsunami because that's got to be close to the coast. We live too far inland. Volcanic eruptions. Has everybody looked at the ring of fire around the Pacific Ocean? They have a lot of volcanic action there. They're having some eruptions over in Hawaii. And in Saratoga Springs, they used to have a hot springs there. That means the lava is kind of close to the surface and it's hot. So we might be close to volcanic eruptions. Of course, we're just getting out of our terrible winter storm. How many of you had more than 3 days you had to clean your driveway and your sidewalks off? I haven't where I live. Plus, I have some nice neighbors when I'm on vacation that takes care of that for me. Another one, how about hazardous? Well, I experienced a hazard material spill. I was working in Pittsburgh, California. We had a facility near us that dealt in gases. they had a gas spill. And we were building the BART rail cars, the latest version of them. And so we had to bring everybody from the shop into the administrative building, turn off all the power so there's no air coming in, tape up any windows or doors that were leaking or any vents. And it was very comfortable being very close to people. So spills are not fun. And nuclears are fun too. I worked in a plant where I was sitting over all the nuclear stuff. It was shielded, but that bothered me a little bit. And I was trained a little bit more in safety equipment. I knew a lot of things that the fire department needed. I volunteered for a group of people that were an emergency team. We were taught first aid and CPR, how to use certain types of hoses, and along with regular fire extinguishers, Scott air packs. We had to know all the hazardous material signs, and we had doors that would close in certain areas if there was a spill. And so you had to know where the suits to put on and the air apparatus was. So it was very interesting. And we were to help when we had to evacuate buildings. Terrorists, oh, this is fun. They could hit us with chemicals. Oh, this is the donut rule. Everybody remember the donut rule. You take a donut and you hold it up on the hazardous area or the terrorist area, and you've got to be able to see the whole scene, whole incident thing through the hole. That's how far away you have to be. Did everybody get that? Now the next thing of that donut, it's got to be the white sugary donut, and you need to wear dark clothes, because if that donut lets all that white sugar fall onto you, blow onto your blue clothing or your black clothing, you're in the wrong direction. So you need to see through the center of the donut and be where the sugar frosting or sugar crumbs blows away from you. So that's what you need to do in those areas. So everybody understand that?
Yep, that was good. A good visual.
Are you
Okay.
talking about fallout? Is that what you're referring to?
Anything, the basic things is you want to be upwind and far away from it. And in one of the training classes I took, somebody brought the donut rule up, and they were fire department and they were in blue uniforms, and they just went through what I said to you. And so you've got to have a clean uniform and see everything in that little hole to be in a safe spot. So as CERT people, we're trying to be out of those areas. Okay, let's go on a little bit here. That first point is you cannot schedule any disaster. They come at their own will. They will come longer and rougher and more than you prepared for. So my rule is prepare for the worst, pray for the best in an emergency. And here's, Chris, as this starts to answer your question a little bit. Emergency personnel may be overflowed. How many people did I say that we had on duty at one time in the city? Do you remember, Chris?
About 11 or 12 or so.
That's right. Now, if you had them going, say, let's say that we had a major event here in Eagle Mountain. Do you think they could cover the whole area? Do you think they'd send them out to all the areas? Anybody can answer that? Not just Chris.
So there's 112 CERT, or is this a mix of emergency and CERT?
Let me repeat the question. If we had our 12 professional responders that are on duty at one time, there are 6 sheriffs out of the city center, city hall. There are 3 firemen and equipment, engines and such at the fire station and city center, and one over here in the ranches area. That comes to about, and each of the fire stations has 3 people. So that gives you 12 people. If it was a major tornado and an earthquake, I'm putting 2 things there together because when we had this pandemic in March, what the next thing hit was we had an earthquake. And there's things that the pandemic didn't hurt. The earthquake can do things like it can disconnect electricity, and that can start fires, or gas can start fires. So when we have incidences, we will have multiple types of problems to work out in each incident. And it may be different in the whole city. So the question was, do you think we would want to put some CERT people on the boots on the ground at that time?
For sure.
Absolutely. That, I didn't know that we only had 12 people. That's wow.
Okay, now, let me give you another little bit of an instance here. I don't know how many live in the city that are our professionals that are for our city. I know that we have one emergency manager that lives in our city, but he works for the city of Orem. I know that we have a retired UFA individual that works out in Cedar Ford area as a volunteer fireman and as an emergency manager for them. Now, those are the 2 I know. I know that we have about 4 or 5 retired UFA people. Over here, one of my neighbors is a retired UFA EMT person.
What is UFA?
Beg your pardon?
What is UFA?
Unified Fire Authority, excuse me.
Oh, okay.
We have for a fire protection in the city of Eagle Mountain, we live in Utah County, but we use a Salt Lake County Fire Department for fire protection. Does that make sense? Let me give you some more details. The UFA has a special wildfire unit with special equipment for wildfires. We have a lot of wildfires in our area. If we used Utah County, according to the people that checked it out and made the decision, we wouldn't get this wildfire equipment and this special training. Plus, over at Camp Williams is where the equipment is, because the National Guard has hired Unified Fire to do their fire protection also. So it's very nice to use Unified Fire for that reason. Plus, they're a good group of people also. I know quite a few of them. So does that help you in any way, shape, or form, knowing some of the things here?
Yeah. How many CERT people do we have?
Well, that's a good question. If Rich was on I don't know if Rich is listening in or not. I
Yeah.
think you're in, Rich?
Yep.
How many people have responded to the emails that you've sent out?
Yeah, we have it varies a little bit depending on the season, but we have between 40 and 50 people that respond monthly to the CERT check-ins.
Okay.
Does that help you?
Awesome. Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to give you little bits and pieces that you don't get in the manual. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Thank
for the
you.
city.
What was that?
That's for all of Eagle Mountain, right?
Yeah, that's for all of Eagle Mountain. If I
Yes.
heard the question, it was a little quiet.
Well, I was trying to make sure I heard your question right. I wear hearing aids, and sometimes electronics don't play good into my hearing aids. So we probably have about 100. And if we can get this new group of people, including yourselves, I think I found out of the 59, we're down to 56 because 3 of them were duplicate entries. We've got about 56 people that would like to bring into CERT. And we would like you to be participating in the different things we do. And Rich sends out an email once a month, seeing if you're still here. Rich and I are both in ham radio also. And people that take a ham radio license, they take the test and pass it, and they are ham radio operators. There is a website we can go to, and we can get their address and their phone number and their call sign and their name, and we can talk to them. The only problem is that license goes for 10 years, and we move more frequently than 10 years. When my wife and I moved here 8 years ago, I forgot to change our address and contact information in that database. So out in California, they were looking for Bill and Donna, but there was no Bill and Donna in California. We're here in Utah. So Rich is trying to, I started it and Rich has picked it up. He's trying to keep an accurate list of people that are here in our city and that are able to respond. And if there's a call out that we need to do something, Rich would get a hold of you, or myself, or our emergency manager will do it. That's Jeff Weber. If not him, his assistant. There'll be somebody trying to get a contact with you to activate you to come to do something. Now we'll get to a little bit of self-activation a little bit later, but let's go on down those to the next one. So we need to know the most hazards here in our community. Okay, there's two major routes into the city. What are those two major streets called? Can somebody give me the answer? Which one do you live closest to, Rich?
Sorry, what was that?
Which main thoroughfare road do you live close to that comes into Eagle Mountain out of the valley of Utah Valley?
I live near Pony Express Parkway.
Pony Express Parkway. I live off of Highway 73. They call that the Corey Wade Highway also. And there's some problems there. From my house, I can look out at these power lines that goes across between Saratoga Springs and my house, or the borderline of Eagle Mountain. It's right at the borderline on Eagle Mountain side of the borderline. Underneath that is all your electrical. On that property, there's your electrical, your gas, your sewage, anything that is pumped in and out of the city goes through that easement where the power lines are. And if you didn't know it, a lot of our sewage is pumped over into the valley. So those are the major ones. Now, if you look at Saratoga Springs, you go into the internet. I didn't take a picture of this, but the last one that I saw that Utah put out, there's areas where there'll be liquefaction. Well, on the map that I was looking at, there was no crossing coming into through Saratoga Springs into Eagle Mountain. Where Rich lives off that street, it didn't exist, but it wouldn't have mattered because all along the west side of the lake, through Saratoga, on Redwood, all the way up to the corner where Walmart is ground that it will shake when there's an earthquake and will liquefy. And so things would sink there. So the roads would disappear and utilities could disappear. Since we've lived here for 8 years, in the last year and a half, they've made this new corridor that before we get to, I think it's about 1,200 or 900 in Saratoga, we turn left and take that corridor and it goes in, drops off on 21 and goes around Camp Williams. And you can get to Redwood with it from there, or you can get to the freeway. But Redwood has a unique property in it. Camp Williams and commanding officer can close down Redwood Boulevard in an emergency. So we now have a way to get out of here. So basically Redwood near Walmart or behind Walmart, taking that pathway around it, is our major way into Utah Valley and into Salt Lake Valley. Otherwise, we have to go to Tooele and down. I don't know which way the 36 goes down. Is that Eureka down there or Delta? Those are our only major ways in and out. So, okay, does everybody understand that? Long explanation. Please ask questions. No comments? Gee, I must be a great explainer. I doubt that I am. But anyway, most of the things we have here in this city are 20 years or less. So some of the things, some of the apparatus for putting out fires is newer standards than what you will see in the CERT manual. But if you leave Eagle Mountain and go to Salt Lake County or over to Provo where they have older areas, or like Lehigh, you will find some of the fire equipment like what's described in our manual, but we'll take care of that later. We have been under the ordinances to have alarms for carbon or gas and for fires, such as if you let your stove, something on your stove, smoke up your kitchen, we have a alarm that'll go off for that. For other types of gases, we have another one. Most of ours will last, most of the city was built in the last 10 years. And let's see, 8 years ago, the city was half as large as it is now because they're saying they're going to have 40,000. And when I moved here, they said they had a little bit over 20. So the city's growing. We've got one more highway patrol, or one more sheriff added to our city, but we've got no more fire stations or firemen on duty at one time than we did 8 years ago, and our population's doubled. Okay, let me tell you something about something that Captain, who was he? Captain, one of the fire captains made a movie and he showed it. I think there's 3 of us that saw it. And why we don't expand our fire department as quick as we do population is because as our city fills in and we have less vacant land, we have less fires in those areas from wildfires. So our wildfires disappear. And we have that one unit sitting over at Camp Williams that can come over and help us. Rich, how many times last year did we get a wildfire start? Was it 3 or 4? Do you recall?
It was something like that, 3 or 4, yeah.
So anyway, as the city grows and the population gets rid of the barren land, we have plants that are green, we have water handy, we have trees growing, we have green plants instead of the dry ones that are normally associated with high desert. So we're safer in that sense. So what I was trying to reassure you on, as we grow more people and they take the place of the barren land, it's safer when it comes to wildfires. Did I say that well enough to everybody to understand? I'm going to take a no answers as yes. And I'm just ad-libbing things to this. We would have more problems. Hazard would be roads plugging up. Would be my first thought on it. Another one would be hazard areas where gas stations are. They have large amounts of gas stored underground. If that leaked, if we had leaks in our natural gas that we pump into the houses, that would be a possibility. Downlines and gas don't go together. Fires and gas don't go together. Another thing that's a plus for our new building code is that there are cities that have 100-year-old houses in them, And even going, but yeah, see, 80 years ago, that put us about the 40s. That's when they started upgrading things. And then in the 60s, as I was living in the 60s, we had pilot lights running on your gas stoves and on your water heaters. And now we have those electronic starters. So if you lose electricity and you have gas, it won't start on your ranges and in your water heaters. So that's something to be aware of. And that's a safety factor. We now wire our water heaters up to the frame of our house so they won't tip over and we won't get that fire from the pilot light. I'm just thinking of some of the things that have changed in my lifetime. But being built in 20 years time frame to the most up-to-date code, we're really blessed in that area here in Eagle Mountain. Has anybody ever run into no electricity, gas, and sewage and water? Does anybody remember about 6 years ago when the city's water well gate was left open and the lock was open and they didn't know if the water was safe or not? And they sent out a message that to boil your water or to use bottled water, and it made every store short of water for about a month. Does everybody remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay. That was a good lesson learner in the sense that if our water source gets contaminated or they find that there's suspicion of it, you'll need to boil water. And it's better to have 1 gallon jugs of bottled water on hand that you can share with your next door neighbor who forgot to get their water on store. Or if you have to move out of the area, it's easier to carry a 1 gallon bottle than it is to carry a 55 gallon barrel of water. So, and it goes quickly. So let's say resources applied to high priorities. My children that are in the policing business, they are, when they say public safety, they're controlling things that are, they're more in the control mode. Firefighters are in the firefighting. They also help with the EMS personnel to take care of life-threatening emergencies. And we've got 12 of them, and I don't know how many doctors. I think there was 1 or 2 doctors that was taking this CERT class that was in the area. So let's go to the next one. I'm slow, so how about it's 8 o'clock. How would you guys like about 5 minutes break so you can go get a drink or go to the restroom or whatever? So let's stop down and start back in 5 minutes. Is that all right?
Sounds good.
Okay, let's go. 5-minute break. You can
You got me.
unmute.
Yes.
Okay, if you can't see anybody's missing, then we're going to start again. You notice my new apparel. I just thought I would show you what the well-dressed CERT person is using. You see some pictures.
When do we get our own?
Vests. Here in our city, we use yellow vests. Some places use green. And basically, CERT is represented by green with yellow lettering. And while I'm on the topic and thinking of it, sometimes helmets say CERT on them, and sometimes they say CERT in the front and not on the side. And something that we discovered about 2 years ago, if I don't tell you in the hands-on course, I want you to remind me. But these helmets are only good for 5 years. And after that, you better check them. In fact, you better check your gear every year. I just pulled out my lamp that goes over my head and the strap broke. So I haven't checked it for a year. So check your gear every year. These plastic will crack. It is only made for impact on coming down from the top. It's not meant for side blows to be hit to the head. So remember to check your gear, especially your hat, hard hat, for cracks. Look at this wonderful eyewear I have. Oh man, I can see. And I have in my pack N95 mask and gloves and all sorts of other gear. I always keep of what I carry in my pack, a list of it. So if you make a kit plus what you get from the city in the future, make a list and add some other things to it. And when we get to the safety equipment, I'll go over some of those items perhaps for you. We're running late. We've talked about gas lines. We talked about my bookshelf falling. The books will fall out, but golly, my brother-in-law made sure that my bookcases won't fall over. Dishes. I'm looking at my kitchen, and a lot of things we grandchildren proof. We have little plugs on locks. We have things on doors. Things will fall out of cupboards. Looked at my daughter-in-law's parents' house up in Alaska when they had their big earthquake a couple years ago, and their garage separated from their house. It looked like somebody came in and dumped all their drawers open and tipped them upside down, pulled all their dishes and anything in a cabinet down, anything sitting on the countertop was down on the floor. It was a great mess. And there was ruptured water lines. Of course, that turned to ice in Alaska. Heaters don't work and ranges don't work. And oh, it's just a mess. And if you get hit with anything, it'll be something falling out of your shelves or off your cupboards, etc., or counters. So go through and mitigate what you have around, what you can safely tie down or glue it down to keep it from falling. Check for faulty wiring. Most of us put too many plugs into circuit breakers for that circuit. Rather, let's say you put plug into a plug. You have those bars with half a dozen outlets on it, and you get 2 or 3 of them plugged into one, and before long you got about 10 or 20 plugs. Make sure they're not overloaded. Make sure the cords are not frayed. Do a good safety check with what you have in your manual. Just be aware of all the hazards and alerts and warnings. The places you can evacuate to. Sheltering plans that you make up. You need to make sure they work good. And you need to take, I'll send this out to you. I have a book that when I moved to Utah, what was it like to live in Utah for emergencies? And so I picked up this book, and it was written by a local person that had been writing articles for 30 years for Utah. And he had some pretty good ways of doing it. I'll supplement what the manual puts out to you, and we can even have a Zoom on it and talk about it a little later. Be sure to address yourself and people that you know in your planning. keep your skill set sharp so that you can quickly look at situations and effectively know how to protect yourself. Make sure your disaster plan has dates on it and is reviewed annually, and some places maybe semi-annual. Make sure your children have drills. They don't read, some the younger ones. Some of the bigger ones don't pay attention to what you've written down, but a drill will help get the muscle memory and what to do when there is a disaster. You need to have assembly places. One where you shelter in place, one where you out of your home that you would meet if you were around in the neighborhood. One that would be plans of how you travel. Take a map and mark how your children come from schools to your house, their major route, and what hazards might make them detour, and what is the second and the tertiary routes they would take. When we come home from work, all of us adults need to know which way we come. And with this pandemic, thank heavens, a lot of us are working at home and are retired like myself. Get these plans going and participate in your CERT training or any volunteer program you can find that will train you in hazards. Here's one that I have been keeping up with my family. I have 6 children, and one lives here in Utah. I live here in Utah. I have 1 in Texas. I have 4 in California, 2 in Southern, 2 in Northern. I have check-in contacts with them. I make sure their name's on it, their nickname also, address, all the phones, since everybody carries cell phones now. I've got a lot of teenage grandkids that have cell phones. Some of us are ham radio operators. I put our call signs in and what frequency and what towers would be working off of, or how to get us through your telephone through Echolink. There's a lot of ways to communicate when you're out of the area. Now, I also put down my next door neighbors, and they say to do this for people that are old. I guess 74 is old enough to be an old person. I don't think I am, but I am, I guess. Anyway, they say if you're older, you should have your next door neighbors on there. So if you have parents that you want to check on and you don't live near them, get their neighbors on each side of them. They'd know if your folks are there or not, or if they need help or whatever. But basically it's, are you okay? Now the Red Cross has a program in major disasters. They try to get families reunited. And like if you had a major tornado or a major hurricane, they have a process that after a few days when they arrive into the area, they usually plan on 4 days arriving at an area. They try to connect people up with each other. And are you okay? They have a method of doing it, but be able to have this in and out of state check-in. Your telephone lines. If you have a landline, they have a percentage, and it used to be about 10 to 15% that could call within a area codes number. People from in and out, from outside of the area could call in, but there's only so many percent that can go out. Your cell towers, they can be shut down by cities and counties and states. And the only, because of the high bandwidth use, but the low bandwidth part that can be utilized is your texting. Of course, you have limited time on texting. Is how much battery life do you have? Computers will go down. My internet provider does it through electronic waves through the air, and he has a 24-hour backup on it. Look at how your provider gives you the IP connectivity. You got to make a decision to stay or go, shelter in place or evacuate. If you pull up a 72-hour kit and hit the road with no place, no destination within 72 hours, I like to call that your refugee bag instead of your bug out bag. It's a bug out bag if you have a place to go and stay, another place to shelter within 72-hour walk. Make sure you have alternate routes and alternatives on maps for evacuations. Children in school, make sure you know what it takes to get a kid out of school, because the schools have protocols. They won't let them be released to just any old person. Make sure you have enough people on their cards that says they can be taken by them and brought to you besides yourself, such as parents, grandparents, next door neighbor, good friend, brother or sister. Make sure those cards are filled out or records are kept in schools. Look at how you have transportation. Is it on foot, bicycle, pogo stick, or roller blades? You better look at those a little carefully and be sure to practice that plan. Okay, after a disaster strike, you'll have time to, I can't read what the next word is, or search for supplies. You don't have time. You've got to have them stored. If you gather supplies in advance, you will be better off in an emergency. Most people have their home as their primary place to survive at. How many of you need kits for your household? You need multiple ones. You'll need one for your car, one for your carry in your pocket or purse, one to carry in your backpack, one to have a kit upstairs and downstairs. Have a ladder in your upstairs rooms. How many of you have more than one floor of living area? That's a major thing, especially with all the townhouses and the condos that we have around here. Make sure your equipment's easy to get to and you check it regularly, and make sure if you put things in there for children like clothing or shoes or socks, make sure they fit frequently. Try them on at least once a year. Do that plan. Keep your family members informed and work with your co-workers to have a plan. When I worked in LA County, I would have to drive about 70, 75 miles through LA County, all the way through Orange County into Riverside County. And I kept a backpack on there that I used when I went backpacking as a scoutmaster. I had a rule that every time I used that backpack, I cleaned it and restored all the goods up to whatever I wanted to be the ingredients in that pack. If you have a pack, make sure you have ways to add things to it, like winter is different than summer and spring and fall. In fact, one day here, since we moved to Utah, we had 4 seasons in one day. Can you imagine that, 4 seasons in one day? I see everybody's turning off their microphones. That's all right. Take a scenario and try it out with your kids, and try it every year, and make dates on there. If you're going to learn how to do a fire extinguisher or a first aid course, a CERT course, make sure it has a date that you're going to complete it by, regardless of what this pandemic says you can do. Sometimes it's breathing that you have to worry about. Sometimes it's debris you have to worry about. Sometimes it's contaminants. Make sure you have good hygiene all the time. Now we're on your manual, page 19, unit 1. Look at your pictures there. They'll show you something about identifying internal rooms and where you're going to have to stay for several hours. Make sure certain things are in those rooms, a way of sealing them. Be able to stay for up to 2 weeks, and your supply should be that 72 hours to move. That's about 25% of your body weight. 25 pounds is a good number. add and subtract things that you need. Then there's mass care shelters. When you go to a mass care shelter, if they have so much room for a family, now we have that extra distancing in there for sheltering. They'll give you a cot. They'll give you a blanket. If you have little kids and they have them on hand, they'll give them something like a teddy bear or something. Make sure you, in your refugee bag, you have a deck of cards or something to keep the kids entertained when you're going to shelter. When you go to shelter, you will not be able to have guns, knives, swords, spears, all kinds of armament like that. You will not be able to have recreational drugs. You will be able to, you'll have to sign in and you'll have to say it in your little area, basically, and they'll feed you 1 to 3 meals a day, depending on what they can get. They will be a place to stay out of the weather, generally. Now, if you're in a real bad situation, like we have a lot of LDS buildings around us here in Utah, and they're made available in emergencies to cities to use. Those buildings may be broken down or whatever. So be prepared when you go to shelter.
What's the policy for pets? Typically,
that's a good question. Typically, the Red Cross would have an area set up for sheltering of pets. But again, your pets are going to go with you. They'll take a working animal such as a seeing eye dog. I don't think they would take a pet like a snake or anything of that nature, or they would keep it minimum. So basically, they want to try to keep you safe. They want the police department and military to be outside of the shelter. They do not tell you anybody who's in the shelter. If I was at a drill in Nephi and a colonel asked, what if we had a criminal down there in the shelter? Would I tell him if he was in there? And I can't tell him because that's against the rules of sheltering. We want to keep you safe in the shelter. But I got to thinking, what would I do if I knew there was a dangerous person in the group? And I won't tell you what I would do, but I would be very serious about watching that person. And this colonel, I believe he was, we talked about it for a while. The Red Cross is in places like third world countries where they have dictators. So the Red Cross rules are the same for anywhere in the world. Here in the United States, FEMA uses Red Cross for sheltering and feeding. They also use, in some areas, can't think of a religious group name. I'll think of it in a minute. They have some church groups that'll do things for them. There's the Southern Baptist Cook. The LDS Church provides food and buildings, and the Red Cross dispenses it. That's kind of a way it works here in Utah. Other states may have different religious groups providing and cooking, but the Red Cross usually is the person that shelters and feeds people. Did that help any? Does that help? Please respond.
yeah, I think so.
I'm just trying to give you a lot of things. There's a lot of things out there that go on. Seventh-day Adventist was one of them. And what's the other one? Oh, I can see the people's faces, but I can't think who they belong to for another group. Okay, make sure your insurances and all your documents are together. Older buildings, the foundation needs to be bolted. We don't worry about that. We don't need to have special trusts for hurricanes or reinforce the roof. We usually don't have shingles. We usually have other type of material for roofs. Chimneys and propane tanks need to be strapped. Mobile homes need to be strapped to their slabs. Utilities need to be raised. Here in Utah, my water heater in my basement is not raised. My house in Riverside had about, let me see, about 18 inches to 24 inches off the ground on it. And okay, you can have a safe room together in your house where there is no windows. That's for tornadoes or heavy sleet that might be hitting the or hail hitting your windows. Have you ever been in a hailstorm? I was down in Texas, and they were about half-inch stones hitting the car, and everybody would pull over and find a tree to get under to break some of the impact of the hailstones. And I've seen some hailstones that have dented car windows, chipped the windows, and it's a good thing to follow the 18-wheelers when you're in a whiteout or a hailstorm. They find shelter and they can see further than you can. Okay, all appliances secured and office equipment, childproof cabinets and doors and plugs, locate labels and gas. By the way, most of your electricity and your gas and all of them are color-coded nowadays. And when I was a kid, they didn't have that. When I was a kid, it was the late 40s and through the 50s. I was in high school in the 60s and rated in 64. So things have really changed. The water heaters are better. The stoves are better. No pilot lights, remember. You're secured your water heater. Make sure you have flexible gas lines and shutters if you are in hurricane area. Here we only have tornadoes. I don't know of anybody having that. Okay, we're on page PM 121-21, that is. Structure hazards. Don't run outside, stay inside. It's safer. With the things blowing around and falling off of two-story buildings and such, with houses nowadays, it's better to be inside. But if it's an earthquake, don't stand in doorways like they tell you to, if it's got a door attached to it, because that door slams open and shut. I was in a 6.2 earthquake, 80 miles away from the epicenter I was living in Lakewood, California at the time. Pools with a 6.2 had tsunamis in the sense that they had waves coming out of them about 1 to 2 feet high. Pools got emptied. Furniture moved around. We had 2 sons at the time. One was in a crib. One was in his bed. The one in his bed, it was getting up time at 6 o'clock area. He was coming down the hall and he was literally bouncing off of the walls as he was coming towards our room. Our other son was having a kick laughing. We had hardwood floors and his crib had rollers on it and it was rolling all over the room and he thought that was fun. I was trying to get up out of bed. I could not get up out of bed until the energy from the earthquake stopped. It was quite an experience. 3.1s or 2s are nothing compared to 6.2. Each number means it's 10 times greater than the number before it, like a 5 to a 6, it's 10 times greater at 6. Outside, okay, landsides, just find a place to get out of the area, or be out of the area where the landside's falling and coming towards the house. You might have to evacuate. Flexible hoses, wildfires, you may have to evacuate. Again, no wooden shingles here in our area. Make sure your house is clear up to 30 feet if you live near open land. CERT responds to post-disaster by treating life-threatening injuries, which we'll be getting to in Unit 3 and 4 till the professionals arrive. Okay, if it's bad enough, as I said earlier, if our 12 people cannot respond to our city needs and our next door neighbor city can send us mutual aid, it will be on the way. All the people that are professional responders that are badged to go to the fire department or the policing agency, they will respond to that area. They may not be able to make it. Here in this area, we have, like, for example, my area, I have a chief out of the Sandy Fire Department down on my block. It makes a U shape. It's on the other end of the U. We have a policeman out of Bluffdale. So look who's around you. Know your neighbors. You're going to be helping in disasters to help survivors cope. It'll be emotionally. You're going to have to sometimes locate and turn off utilities. Don't do it unless you have to, and it's safe to do it. If you have to extinguish a fire, make sure it's not any bigger than a trash can, a small trash can. You will do some light search and rescue. Now let's look at this organization here. It's simplified, okay? This is a simplified incident command. And I think I've got one of my own and put in here after this. Your area is going to have a team leader. Who's the team leader? First person to your place where you gather. In my neighborhood, we're going to head down, since most of the people are on Kilkenny that are CERT trained, they're going to end up at the lower part of Kilkenny, and I'm up on the upper part, and we'll be going down towards this lower part of Kilkenny. It goes from the higher part to the lower part. There's a maybe a couple 100 feet difference in height. We'll meet there. There we will meet at a person's house that there are 3 people in there, 3 adults, 3 ham operators. 2 of them are CERT trained. 1 of them is a retired nurse. From there, we'll go down to Inverness, and we'll have part of our neighborhood turn to the right and part to the left. We have an LDS building over to the right. It may or may not be standing, but we'll go to the 2 different other areas and start to research those areas. And when we go to the first spot, we'll set up this incident command. We will try to get a hold of the city. The reason we picked a house, whether they have a ham radio operator, is because the ham radio operators will be working inside of the Emergency Operations Center, the EOC at City Hall. Or if that one's damaged or unable to be used, it would be an alternative one, and they will have a ham radio there. We also have 2 CERT trailers. One will be stationed probably at each fire station. So if the fire department puts up 2 incident commands, one for city center and one for Ranches area, we'll have a CERT trailer there to augment theirs. The fire department.
Are there, so there's only 2 CERT trailers for all of Eagle Mountain?
In the CERT trailer, we have things such as awnings to put up to make places for people to go. We'll have an incident command one. We'll have one for operations. We'll have one for logistics and things of that nature. I'm just going to summarize at the moment. We have 2. We will be supplementing what the fire department is doing. We will help the, well, I'll get to that later.
Okay.
Let's talk about the emergency cycle for a minute. This is something I went to the internet and found, and then I wrote some text with it from after reading a lot in my years of working with emergencies. If you notice they circle over to the side. The red is respond. That's when you're going to put on your green hat and your yellow vest, and be official. Everybody will listen to you because you have the hat and the vest. But in reality, you better plan beforehand. In Utah versus California, there are more people having some preparation to being fully prepared than there is in California. and not having to start to prepare after the response has to be done. So preparation is very vital. You're as good as you've practiced and you're equipped with, and you can make do with what you have. Out in the wilderness, I've had to do wilderness first aid and had to have people evacuated. That's different than being in your house. But if you have a major tornado, you may not have a house. Your gear may not be there. And let's go on from there. So you got to have a plan. So we need planning, we need training, we need supplies. Now, when something happens, we have to have a operational plan. City's supposed to have one. Every little group of CERT people in neighborhoods should have their own. And it should include your ham operators in your area. And I can give you a copy of that you would need. Incident command needs to be put into place. I will not be able to get over to the fire station because of the wires or because of the gas line over in the ranches area. So I'll depend on a ham radio because my telephone or cell phone may not be working to get in with the people at the EOC. After the major disasters under control, we get some sort of simulants back to where we use our professionals to take care of everything. The CERT people will go into a recovery mode and help clean up the affected areas, or if anybody's injured, help them to get recuperated and back into their place, and take care of the emotional recovery that needs to be done. Then the next comes rebuilding. Make sure you have on a disk, on a USB drive, in a box that's fireproof, your vital records, insurances, mortgages, birth certificates, passports. Now we need to have your pandemic cards there with your passports or your birth certificates. That's going to be a thing in the future. So make sure you're prepared. And so when you're rebuilding, you better have all those records. And I got a email, well, my son did a FaceTime, and he was driving around Houston, and Harvey, I believe, was the hurricane they had there. And he made a comment to me, "Dad, look at, what do you see at all these houses?" And I said, "Well, I see a lot of garbage out to the curb, tree limbs, old furniture that got wet or got water on it from the overflow of the riverbanks and from the flooding area." And he says, "No, Dad, take another look. What do you see?" I said, "I don't know what you mean." He says, "Look at the car license plates. They're all brand new." I said, "Okay, what are you talking about?" I see, "That's you're 2 weeks after these people got their FEMA checks early." He says, "Yes, everything's electronic." And they got it done so quickly that Congress had to go back and pass more money to FEMA to take care of all these electronics, claims that are being happening. So be sure to have some way of electronically passing this information to FEMA and take care of things. Be sure to have at least $400 to $500 in your pocket between you and your spouse. ATM machines may not work. Banks may be closed. Gas stations may not work. You may not be able to buy a hamburger because they use computerized stuff. But if you have money in your pocket, you're secure. Now with the pandemic, everybody wants you to use plastic. Make sure you have money in your hands. FEMA did a research about 2 years ago. Maybe 20% of the people, if they were lucky, had $400. And if you could get your hands on $3,000 within 3 weeks, you would be doing good. A lot of people, you need to have cash on hand, is what I'm trying to tell you. So does anybody have any other questions about cash and what can happen in recovery? No questions? Good, I'm a great explainer. I used to teach at college a class called Geometric Dimensioning and Tolerancing. And I was such a great teacher, I thought. I had these students that were low, or their primary language was not English. It was, I think they were Chinese or Japanese, I can't remember. But they were so polite that they kept shaking their head up and down. Oh man, I must really be a great teacher, I kept saying to myself. I asked them a question right before break to fill in a few minutes, and they turned white. Just, they were turning pale because they didn't know what to do. In their culture, questions are not asked of the teacher and questions are not asked back to them. It's so if you don't say something, I think I'm the greatest teacher in the world. So please keep me humble and say something once in a while. Or if you're just, never mind, read your book as we're going through it. Here's another one I inserted. All disasters are local. They start out at the local area. In the local area, it's the family, individuals, families, neighborhoods, the whole city, then the whole county. Then it gets up to the state level. Then it gets to the federal. Then it comes back to the state and comes back to the local and finally gets back to the individual. This is how all disasters work. FEMA is the federal. When the people can't take care of themselves, the local government can't take care of the disaster, the counties go to the states go to the federal government, and then it comes back the other way. So in the end, it starts out as an individual and it ends as an individual. So I hope that helps people get a sense of things. Be prepared. Incumbent or incident command. I've expanded what they put in the book. If we as CERT people, such as myself, I'm going to think as the incident commander, I'm going to be the first one to the meeting place. And it doesn't count that people live there. It's the first one on the feet out the front door is going to be the incident commander. Any of those would make fine incident commanders, by the way, that live at that house that we're meeting at. So if they run out to the front door and check everybody in, they're the incident commander. But if I was there first, here's what I would set up. It's the yellow. Watch what happens in the yellow. If you can read it, as a team leader, I would start the incident command. That incident command can be shared with a professional. The minute they walk into the area to the incident command headquarters, they are in charge. You report to them and you tell them what to do. I'd say, here's where we're at, what do you want us to do? Or he had asked me, where are we at? What are you doing? And I'd give him the report. If you are in an area that has a business, such as a doctor's office, such as a grocery store, such as a manufacturing plant, those are the people you're going to grab a hold of. You're going to get the boss at the gravel yard, or the boss at the department store, or the grocery store, or the church leader. Get them there because they know certain people in your area better and they know their resources. Marvelous thing to have. You are still in charge of information and safety as the team leader. Then the next person you need to find, you need to set up operations. And operations goes down to groups. You start getting the groups together. The next thing equivalent to operations is logistics. This is people and products. And that group of people is where your ham operators, if they were not attached and working with your CERT team, would go. Any spontaneous responder should go to the logistics area that you set up. There they we'll teach you about that later, but there they go to get assignments to do things. And they may get training, they may need equipment. So in the logistics, you will gather the equipment. You have people doing operations that may go on for 12 hours, 4 hours. They may go on for 2 or 3 days. You make sure that they're fed, make sure that they have a place to rest, they have a break time. Logistics supplies people and goods for it. If operations needs more people, they go to logistics. Logistics gets them and trains them and brings them to the operations. Now, for simplicity, I put down search and rescue. Those may be 2 separate teams, or they may be 1 team. And then the next one is medical. Well, I have 2 nurses in my neighborhood. I have 1 retired paramedic. Where are they going to go? They're going to be my medical if I was the operation leader. Search and rescue. I want somebody that can walk. I don't want somebody that's in a wheelchair. I want that person in a wheelchair that's trained to CERT to teach people. They are going to grab the teenagers or the spontaneous responders and guide them through things they need to do, the task that will be figured out by the planning. Planning is the 3rd thing I would bring up line. Finances, we probably wouldn't get involved with. So the team leader is responsible until he assigns somebody. So you get your liaison group together, make one of them the leader. You get an operations person, make them the leader, and then you start putting your other CERT people into the operations. And then you'll find somebody to run logistics. I keep running out of voice here, excuse me. I'm running out of time. Now, if you follow the blue, and where that other diagram before this didn't go into effect, didn't show you, is an ICS can be made up of areas or neighborhoods. You have several CERT teams below you. You don't have any search and rescue people. You don't have any medical, but you have areas that are responsible to you as a team leader. And you use a command structure of 7 people follow 1 person. Minimum is 3, maximum is 7. That's the way the fire department works. That's the way most rescue units work. 7's the maximum, 3's the minimum, 1 leader. Reminds me of the old Boy Scout patrol. 8 scouts, 1 is the leader. You can split it in half, make 1 the assistant leader, and you have 2 groups of 4. 1 leader, 3 people. So remember the old patrol method. Next one. Oh, this is a question that's really interesting on page 124 on the U of U test. They go through an area and they'll show you different items, and you have to relate them to whether it is a PPE, personal protection equipment, or not personal equipment. What I'm wearing is a vest. They show shoes, they show helmet, they do not show a backpack, do not show a flashlight. They show leather gloves and a respirator and probably a goggles, and they show a vest, which is not the personal the PPE stuff. The one thing that everybody gets caught on is they check this off as personal protection equipment. It is, but the person that made the test up in the U of U doesn't consider this personal equipment, personal protection equipment, because the manual does not call it out in a little picture like this or in text. It's so be careful. You can get overindulging in your questions. This is personal protection equipment. There are 2 other vests besides this that are supposed to be in the CERT trailer. One is for daylight traffic direction, and one is for nighttime traffic direction. This vest is not authorized by the powers to be in FEMA, but everybody wears them. And it's to do with how much reflective material you have on it. This one has very little. The type 2 and 3 have different, so that's a special course. So that's one of my grumblements about the U of U test. It's they only have part of the answers right. Okay, look here at these vests. You see some in green, some in yellow. The fellow with the yellow jacket has yellow or has silver reflective stuff on it. That will be good for directing. You notice some of them have red and orange and yellow, or orange and silver on it. That will be better for directing. Some of them have red. There's all different colors. CERT colors are background is green, yellow text. You'll be asked to help at fairs, distribute information, answer questions, staff aid booths, assist in installation of smoke alarms. That's a program Red Cross also has. They provide it in areas that are old. Participate in parades and their routes and manage them. Do first aid for them. Here's the thing that's, when you self-deploy, when the city doesn't tell you to deploy, you are not on their workman's compensation, but you have protection under the Good Samaritan law. Do not do anything beyond what you're trained for. If you were trained for first aid, only do first aid and the things that you were trained for. If you were trained for to do other equipment for CPR, do that. If not, do the manual only. Then there's a Protection Act for the federal government that was passed in 1979, and there may be other state statutes. I'm not going to go into them. Additional training, you can look at these. The ADE, do not use it unless you've been trained on it. If somebody dies after you using it, you're liable. You're not protected by the workman compensation. You're under the Good Samaritan law. If you stop at the site of an accident, Good Samaritan is what you're doing. If you have not been trained in CPR, don't do CPR. Do what you're trained in. Don't try to manage a shelter if you're not trained in shelter management. Traffic control, there's a special CERT course on it. Utilities control, you'll know some of that. Don't turn things back on, just turn them off. It's what you're trained to do. You should now be able to identify roles and responsibilities, describe types and hazards, take personal and organizational preparedness, and describe functions of CERT. Okay, we've taken 2 hours to do an hour. Bill's too windy. Sorry about that, folks. We'll catch up as we go on because there's less hands-on stuff to do. There's a question and answer I'll send you that it summarizes it. You don't have to take the test and pass it with 70% right, like the people do that take the U of U test. And you do have to go through and find some details, and you have to you have to look very closely at how they phrase things. Phraseology means a lot in those U of U courses, or any course that has testing. We're going to go through organization and preparations better next week. I'll send you the questions to that beforehand. You're going to have to look at making a prepared communication list with your family, a plan in and out of state contact, check off some of the supplies you need, make a plan, and examine your house for hazards. Any questions? Yes, no? Is there only 3 of you around or 2 of you around?
Is there, do we take the test? Okay, I'm confused on testing. Is there a test? Do we need to take the U of U test? Do we test in increments by chapter? Is there just one big exam at the end? Or do we just show up and participate and it's considered completed? How's it work?
We will take the test together.
Oh, okay.
And sometimes they are true and false questions. Sometimes they are pick the best answer. And sometimes they get very close on the best answer. Why is one better than the other? And what page did it actually say it on in those words? The U of U, on their chapters 1 and 2, you would see somebody looks like they checked out. OneDrive is saying, that's my thing. Get that off there. They give you, as you read a few pages, go over a few, you don't read your book there, they give you some chart PowerPoints, then they give you a video. They give you a video and they ask you questions. Then they'll go a little bit further and give you some more questions. And they'll go some more and give you questions. Then when you're all done, they'll give you a test over the whole thing. You have to get 75 over each unit. And I would rather you not stop and quit because you can't answer the questions.
Yeah.
I would rather we go over together, somebody can respond, and then we can give you the right answer and why is it the best answer for the question or the
Oh, okay.
It's I'm trying to tell you how they're doing. Now, all of you that have taken the course called 317 that FEMA puts out, there's the
Yes.
short introduction version that changed in April or May, somewhere in there. Prior to that, they had a 6-hour course. It was pretty good, and we would have had to add a few things, but not too much. And we were going to do that at the hands-on, and then they changed it on us, and so we were trying to get everybody to be prepared. If you've taken one of those courses and have a certificate, we will add you to a team, and Rich is going to be organizing the team leaders and such. I'll get with
Oh, good,
you.
because I have a certificate.
Good. If it's a 1-hour course or the 6-hour course makes a difference.
I don't remember.
If you,
I can tell you, hang on.
If you finish this, I'll give you another certificate for this that is equivalent to the U of U certificate for the technology of it. And no two instructors instruct everything identically. I'm following by the FEMA PowerPoints, and you notice I said Bill's Internet when I put something else in there. A lot of agencies add and delete to these PowerPoints. I'm telling you where I'm at. I'm going through what FEMA says is necessary. And if you picked up any other course that's not going through these view foils or PowerPoints, you've now seen it all. Remember, the corner down in the lower right, you can have your manual printed out. Look at that as we're talking. You can ask questions about what you've read beforehand, and go from there. We'll try to do next week, as I said, Unit 2, and probably start Unit 3. And then the next week we'll do 4 and 5, and then 6 and 7 and 8 probably together.
Okay. So it looks like
the
Oh,
test
go
will
ahead.
be at the end.
What's that?
The test will be at the end. Is that the
Every
plan?
week we'll go over what you did the previous week as a test, if we're running late like this.
Gotcha.
And all I'm doing that for is to make sure you hit all the FEMA points, because somebody wrote these manuals. And again, like I was bringing up, sometimes one course will not reflect everything in another course. And even from page to page, if you will have noticed, a lot of times when they talk about ICS and FEMA and CERT teams, they will be called operations chief. Why? Because usually it's a chief in the fire department that's running operations. That's usually a chief in the fire department that's running logistics, a chief in the fire department that's running planning, a chief that is running incident command. Okay, I hope that
Yeah.
helped. I'm trying to give you more than what's here and cover everything's here. So next week, CERT organization, and you can see what it is. Take a quick look. This is what we're going to go to. Did you catch that? Write it down.
Yep.
And then we'll go over all these things, and they're going to pop up this little incident command. I'm going to bring that chart back I did again, and I'm going to try to bring the forms with you. And everything you need to know is on a form.
Okay.
To be a leader, command post leader, the team leader, whether it be a arriving CERT person, whether it be staging area, logistics, a functional team, a victims area, equipment area, communications, they're all in forms. When I took my course, I'm going to make my one more minute here. Excuse me, one more minute. When I took my training course in California, in Concord, California, they had a 1930 building on the fire training station building area. We had to size up that building. We had to, and nobody knew where to start. Bill read the manual. Bill had forms in a notebook. And what do we do was the question. I said, well, we're supposed to size up this building. So I flipped through a form that had all the information on it. I said, how about this? Oh, hey, yeah, let's look for those things. So the forms will guide you. If you have one copy of a master form, then form number one is a piece of blank paper that you can put the same information on, sketch it or write it. So you can have a pad of paper and one form, and it'll take care of the situation. So be sure in your search
Okay.
to have one of every form. That's a preview. Okay, we're going to go how to make ICS flexible. We're going to go, when we get to the end, we'll take a little test. We'll talk about the next one. And we might do it at the first hour, and then we'll have a second. So I'm going to
Okay.
quote. How's that? Is that
Sounds
good?
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Did it tell you anything that you didn't get in your other course? Put the chat.
Yeah, and it looks like it. I just got a certificate for the Introduction to Community Emergency Response Team, 317.A.
Which one was it again?
317.A.
317.
IS-00317.A.
You've read that?
I did. I have the certificate for it.
You got that? Okay. 317. Oh, I thought you talking about page. Bill's not thinking here today. It's too long for me too. Okay, if you've got that, send me a copy when I send you the next stuff.
Okay.
I'll make instructions on that. We're trying to figure out where everybody's at. Thank you, Mindy, for talking a lot to me. I appreciate that. It makes me think I'm not in a recording booth.
Yeah. You bet.
Everybody participated. Thank you. I hope I've given you something that you didn't get in your 317 course.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
Dave,
Bill, I have a question for you.
sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I've done the U of U course and the 317. Am I required to do these Zoom classes as well?
No,
I mean, they're great, but
if you've got the U of U, you're not required.
okay,
Keith,
I didn't understand.
are you a doctor?
I'm an optometrist.
Optometrist. I knew there's somebody that was in medical. Yes, you'll be a great
Yay.
value to the CERT team. You know how to delegate.
I know how to check eyes.
Yes.
Hey, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, there's going to be a lot of eye damage when there's going to be a lot of dentistry problems. People get hurt in their jaws and such. My next door neighbor is a dentist. There's so many things that CERT can be utilized when we cannot get those professionals to help us. I mean, I'm really thankful that we live in a city that within 15 minutes to 20 minutes at the most, we've got somebody there. We've got a police officer, somebody that a highway sheriff's officer there. We've got a fire truck with some EMTs there. They can put out fires. They can help your health. They can keep people out of the area to protect your area. We are really blessed to have that good of a service here in the city that we live in. And we have very dedicated people. I'm really thankful I live in that area. There are some communities where CERT is so scarce and where their fire is only volunteer and they only have 1 or 2 police officers, that it takes over 20 minutes to an hour to get to them. And so many things happen in the first 15 minutes. I don't want to tell you all about the first aid thing. Keith probably knows more than I do on that. With his medical background, I'm sure they put dentists and eye doctors and all together, and you get a great background in medical here in this country. And I'm so glad we don't live in a third world country that they have just witch doctors. If I may be curious. Any other question? Keith, you're welcome to appear, and I'll send you the things as we go along to refresh you if you don't have time to be here.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. I know our bishop's trying to get everybody in our ward to do CERT, but we're trying to figure out how to get them all on board.
Yes, everybody in your neighborhood. When I'm talking, I'm LDS also. When I'm talking about my neighborhood, it's my ward. It's 3
Yeah.
housing tracts. And one of them's being built, halfway built or 3/4 built. And with this pandemic, I don't know those people. They don't know me. And if it wasn't for our Sunday meeting and having a Zoom type meeting and some people getting up there and talking once in a while and introducing themselves because they just moved in and they tell you where they moved in, you wouldn't know those people.
It's true. Yeah.
And really, somebody like you that has a business in a certain area, you will be really good for a period of time. And we'll go into that more later on. But I've found statistics where if you need to get off of this Zoom and go do something, go ahead. This is just additional chatter, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
But let me just give you the story. They say that most people